It's time for the podcast, the Made for Agriculture podcast. Today's Made for Agriculture host is Emily Beck.
Welcome to the Made for Agriculture podcast. I am your host, Emily Beck, and today we have four amazing people sitting in front of me that are going to be discussing the Center for Regenerative Ag and their incentive program for the nutrient management and 4R approach. We have two folks from the Missouri Fertilizer Control Board, which they are actually married. So we have Mitchell Rice. Mitchell Rice is the Missouri 4R Certification Program Administrator. And then we have his wife, Andrea Rice. She is the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach. And then the other person that we have on this is going to be MU Center for Regenerative Ag, Dr. Newell Kitchen. Newell Kitchen is actually a consultant with the Center for Regenerative Ag, and he has a doctorate. So he has done a lot with soils, and he's also an agronomist, and he's even an owner of his own business for Agronomic, Geologic, and Environmental Services, LLC. And to top it, and just add some sprinkles on top of his career, he also has research documented in 150 peer-reviewed journal articles, which is really amazing. But just to drive it home, we also have MFA's Davin Harms. Davin is our retail precision manager for the central part of the state. He covers our District 4, 5, and 6. So if you're thinking of it, it's going to be the Kansas line all the way to the Mississippi River. But today, like I had mentioned, we're going to be talking about MU's Center for Regenerative Ag for nutrient management and 4R approach. It is going to be open August 1st through September 30th for $20 an acre, up to 500 acres, with a maxing out of $10,000. That is a lot of cheddar. With that, there's going to be a 2-pass nitrogen application. We also talk about different requirements, eligibility, and how to get in touch with your ag retailer, which I am hoping is MFA. And we also discuss the different payments, soil sampling, and the fact that MU and Missouri Fertilizer Control Board are going to be coming back together to have a webinar on July 25th at 9 a.m. So I hope you buckle in and turn up your dial, because we have a lot of amazing stuff coming your way in the form of incentive programs with MU. And thank you guys for actually being here and doing this. This is something that I've been wanting to do, especially since we've already spoke with the Center for Regenerative Ag whenever we talked to Dr. Kelly and then also Bethany. And Dr. Kelly was the Associate Director of Center for Regenerative Ag. And then Bethany, she covers the cover crops side of it. She's the Outreach Manager. And they did a really great job talking about cover crops, talking about silvopasture, the climate smart, short fieldscapes, and the regenerative grazing. But one nugget of incentive program that I did not touch on is your guys' nutrient management and 4R approach. And that's one thing that MFA, we've definitely been trying to do more with our NutriTrack system, with our grid soil sampling. And so we thought this paired very well with what we're already doing, because MFA is a partner with this grant with education and outreach. And so I just didn't know if you guys would like to go maybe a little bit more in detail of this, because like I said, we just mentioned it, that there were some different deadlines opening up in August for this, and that people would have accessibility to it. But again, if you guys could kind of just explain what it is, kind of geographical area of where it's really hitting this year, who can sign up, that would be great.
Well, as far as geographical area this year, we are working with the western side of Missouri. We've kind of made an imaginary line of Highway 65, the counties that Highway 65 is, and west they're going to be our primary area this year for our nutrient management program here. We've been working hard in those counties, getting as many for our retailers, and MFA has been an awesome partner in getting those retailers lined up, and we're really excited to work with our MFA friends and on this project.
Oh yeah.
So the western side of the state will be priority 1 for this year. So that'll be signups in 2024, growing season 25. Last year's signups were for Northeast and Central Missouri. And if there were some folks that got left out of that, they can apply, but they will be priority 2. So they can try. But priority one will be given to the western side, and then the following year, so cropping season 26, signups in 25 will be for Southeast Missouri.
Okay, thank you, Andrea and Mitchell. And then Newell, did you want to touch any more on that, or?
Well, the one thing I would add is just to kind of put it into context, and that is, this program is one of hundreds that have been funded through USDA. They call it Climate Smart, but it's really a program centered around carbon because that's something that there's been a lot of discussion on relative to carbon markets and things like that. Well, why are we talking about nutrient management when it's carbon? Because, we don't apply carbon necessarily to the fields as a fertilizer. Well, when it comes to agricultural carbon, the fertilizer that does have a huge impact is nitrogen. And so that's where it ties into for our nutrient management stewardship. And so our part of this program has to do with nitrogen and what can be done to help us do a better job to increase nitrogen use efficiency. And if we can achieve some goals there, we will achieve automatically some goals associated with the interests relative to carbon. So that I kind of think of it in big picture and kind of want to make sure I understand that well for myself so that I can explain it well to others. And so that's the reason why we're focusing on a specific practice associated with nitrogen.
Yeah, and you would think that then whenever you're reading through the nutrient management incentive payment program, that you would see a lot of stuff dealing with, hypoxic zone and water and everything like that. But when you're looking at it, you guys are really highlighting greenhouse gases, and you're trying to reduce that for this. And I thought that was kind of different, that, again, I would have thought it would be more water quality, more doing with water and as opposed to the air.
Yeah, and that has to do with, again, there's a lot of concern about the big title with this thing is Climate Smart Agriculture. And so climate, what does that mean? And everybody has some different thoughts about that. And that's not necessarily where we need to go today. But nitrogen is an important part of what happens in the atmosphere, particularly through this greenhouse gas, nitrous oxide. And so, and because of its significant effect that it has on atmospheric conditions, and it's got a bullseye on it. Okay. And so we need to do things in a way to kind of keep that from going out into the atmosphere. So any practice that kind of helps to reduce that, it's a win for everybody. So, and that's the reason why public dollars are being put into practices to encourage that. So call it a conservation practice differently perhaps than what we've had in the past, but it's still a conservation practice that in the end should also be very, very helpful for the producer from the standpoint of just economics. And that's
so, yeah, MFA, gosh, I think we're in our 6th or 7th year using a system, a software system that helps track nitrogen losses throughout the season. And that's part of growers that participate in NutriTrack automatically get to use this system through us, where we track nitrogen loss, because we've been a big proponent of 2-pass nitrogen. Like if you want to put some on in the fall, put part of it on in the fall and have a planned pass to come back in the spring, preferably top dress or whatever, but also doing a better job building nitrogen use zones, like where you have the potential to make more bushels, put more nitrogen there. Where you don't have the potential, don't waste it and don't let it go to the groundwater or to the ozone, to atmosphere, where you could capture it with a crop to further drive down that nutrient use efficiency number and stuff. And like you said, kind of get the best bang for your buck and be better for the environment as well. So
Yeah, be better stewards for sure. Thank you, Davin. And I know that fertilizer is so cheap. So cheap. Why would we want to save our fertilizer and make sure that we're applying it where it needs to be applied as opposed to blanket applying? And that's one thing that I know that working with Missouri Fertilizer Control Board has been a really great partner for MFA, but I've also seen for the grant as well. And I think it's been a really great caveat for you guys to kind of be there and kind of promote some other things with Missouri Fertilizer Control Board. And I just didn't know if you guys wanted to kind of highlight how you guys are promoting this, especially with kind of the requirements and eligibility for the grant.
Well, as far as Missouri Fertilizer Control Board is concerned, our optimal goal is to make sure that every bit of fertilizer that is applied to a crop field is absorbed by the plant. So whether that's through making sure that it doesn't happen through nitrification as a greenhouse gas or into waterways, we want every bit of it to be used by the plant, which of course is best for the producer as far as economics and agronomics go. But it's been great to work with partners like MFA in getting these programs promoted. We've been working directly with retailers for our certification program and promoting that primarily through Mitchell's work, but also able to work with producers and highlighting some of the great things that they're doing.
So, conservation is our number one goal on this, conserving our environment, conserving our time, and conserving our pocketbooks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one-stop shop when it comes to all those things, and it's great for the environment, great for the producer, and great for the retailers.
Oh, yeah. So how, I guess, is this grant accomplishing that?
So certainly there's been a lot of good research in the last 5, 6, 7 decades with regards to understanding what happens when you're talking about erosion and tillage, or you're talking about cover crops, or you're talking about nutrient management. There's just a lot of things that have the wealth of understanding of what happens on agricultural fields has grown, and it's evolved to where much of that information is packaged into what we refer to as models.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we want to know what happens with carbon. We got a bunch of models, and USDA uses these models to kind of track what's happening. And models are used as a part of nutrient transformation and pathways, and you refer to it. And my guess is there's a model that you have there that's associated with coming up with an estimate of what's happening on farmers' fields. So the science is built into the model. And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to, one, improve the models. So there's a build on to the science. And so that's a part of a lot of these projects, is there's still scientific inquiry on those things to get better. And two, that is just to put into practice that we do know. And how do we break cultural trends of how we've done it in the past, with where we say we're gonna embrace this practice or this practice because it will be there's science behind it that suggests that it's a better way of doing it. So that's where a program like this, it's to incentivize some practices. And you mentioned that there's been more and more in-season application of nitrogen in corn. 30 years ago, it was just down the boot hill. You never did see that up here in this part of the state. And you gradually see it happening, but there's some resistance to that. So how do you kind of break through those barriers of adoption? Well, sometimes it's best to use some public dollars to help to get additional producers saying, okay, let me try it. Let me see if I can make this work. And particularly if they don't have to get equipment, they can just, kind of join hands with their ag retailer, whoever that is, and say, hey, let's do this and let's make it happen. And over time, then they get more comfortable with that practice, and it kind of becomes the new norm. So that's, I think, what the goal of this, whether we're talking about nutrient management, nitrogen management, or the cover crops, or any of the other programs associated with this project. There's like 8 of them. different individual programs. And so they all kind of focus on certain practices. And it's a new way of doing business for USDA. It's not using federal employees to do it. It's kind of outsourcing. Now, so why are you using a third-party group? In this case, it's the Center for Regenerative Ag on the campus of the University of Missouri. Why use that group to kind of help to implement this program? Well, maybe it's better. Maybe it could be more efficient. Maybe there's a way of kind of building new trust relationships. University tends to have, with a lot of people, a high level of credibility because there's a lot of research that's gone behind some of those practices. And so you kind of link that together. And I think there's opportunity for helping make those things happen by doing it in a little different way than what it's been in the past.
And I know a lot of times going in that USDA office, I think everybody's had that discussion of how much paperwork you have to go through, ranking processes, the challenge of actually getting those practices applied on your land. It is possible, and there are a lot of folks that are doing it. I definitely recommend going to your NRCS office, FSA office, any of your local, state, federal, because there are great programs. But I agree with you on this, that it is a lot quicker for this application process and the ease of it. And also, I think not necessarily the hand holding, but the reassurance that you guys are there with a quick response when you do have questions. That is something that I know I've even enjoyed, just asking you guys, hey, I have questions about this. We have an ag retailer that's worried about this. So that's one thing that I really think is one of the other benefits of this. The one thing that you guys have kind of been mentioning, but we really haven't dived in as deep, is what exactly do people or producers need to be doing on their operation already to be eligible for this? But also, what are they, signing up for? Is it a split nitrogen application? So can we just dive just a little bit deeper on what exactly they need to be they are signing up for, and what are eligibility requirements?
Well, one of the big eligibility requirements is having a 4-year soil sample. We need to have the nutrient recommendations to have the proper formula of nutrients to put on the ground. Go ahead.
The grid or a composite, or do you make a distinction there?
Well, we prefer a grid, but a composite is acceptable on, you've got a 40-acre field, get 2 samples. We need it less than 25 acres. But if you have a big field, grid sampling is our preferred method. But you got anything to add to that?
Well, with that, as far as so we are encouraging people as part of the 4 R's. We're working with producers to have nutrients applied from the right source at the right time, at the right rate, and in the right place. So as part of that, and knowing the right source and the amount, is knowing what you're starting with that soil sample, and then working with partners like MFA to create that plan. And you guys have that trusted relationship with your producer. Like Newell said, it's kind of a new way of doing business for the USDA, but also for us to be able to take advantage of that trust relationship that you guys have built over time and with a great deal of effort. And so by doing that, you guys know your producers and their fields and what their reasonable crop yield goals are, and just capitalizing on that and building off of it to where they can take the next step with wherever they are today. There aren't any, some programs you can't have done no-till in the previous 5 years, as an example. There isn't anything like that as far as a prerequisite with the Circle Grant.
I was going to say there is one. If you're currently enrolled in a 590 program,
Okay.
That
is a nutrient management.
Yes, it's a nutrient management program. You cannot use this program on that current acre. But if the farm has other acres that are not part of the 590 program, this program will work for you. You can't stack with those like you can with some of the other programs in the Circle application. So But the main thing is we want to have a good recommendation on the land. So, you know, a 4-year rec, composite on some of your smaller acres, preferably grid on your larger acres. We realize a lot of fields, you've got some big fields, and composite might work on those, you know, where you have 1 or 2 zones, but it needs to be within the 25 acre or less zone. But, and it also works for a lot of farmers. We all know today, farmland is a very, very high commodity, a wanted commodity. And tenants are changing, like landowners are changing, and we don't know what the previous farmer did. This is a good way to go in, get the proper recommendation for your acres, because you never know, the farmer in front of you might have mined the ground. And you need to start out with a good plan, just not a normal base rate.
So one of the things I like to try to help people understand is, you know, and individuals may ask, why are you tying this to 4R per se? Because that's kind of a big program. And it's interesting to note, when the group that put this program together, you know, they used the 4 puzzle pieces that are interlocking in as a kind of a symbol to represent the 4R. Okay. And there's good reasons for that, because we can talk source, placement, rate, timing. We can talk about those 4 things, but they don't stand independent. Okay. And that's one of the things that's about this project. The practice that's being incentivized is a nitrogen timing practice. But it doesn't really stand alone. And so through this 4R certification process that's being done through the control board, you know, we're saying, you know, there needs to be some training there. We want you to be doing soil sampling. We don't really use soil samples to drive nitrogen decisions in this state. Other states they do, but not so much here. But phosphorus and potassium and having things right with those 2 nutrients helps us get higher nitrogen use efficiency. So that's where these things are tied together. So that's the reason why you got to do the soil testing too. So there's a soil testing component that's helping to drive the decisions of what a person's going to do. And then there's the working with the retailer that has a good background in understanding those 4R nutrient management stewardship principles. And so we're kind of doing an additive, integrated kind of approach to this. So there are some eligibility requirements by virtue of these things that we're doing. But a lot of it's being done already. It's not like people are going to be starting over, but we want to make sure that they're in place before you get to that practice, that specific practice that's incentivized on this program. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does.
Yeah, you manage nitrogen all you want, but if you haven't done the right things with your P and K, you haven't set up that your crop to succeed. And I think we've honestly, as an industry, missed the boat some on doing a better job variable rate applying nitrogen based off of yield zones, because I think that's just been traditionally a flat rate application across the board, and where we are. And I think that if we could somehow figure out a way to drive that home to producers better, so they for the most part, a lot of producers we work with buy into that on P and K, and it's just hard to it's a struggle to get them bought into that on nitrogen. Whenever we have the yield is not static. When we go across the field, you can see it with a monitor display out there. We can analyze years of yield data and say traditionally these pockets, these parts of this soil have outperformed the rest of it. So why are we putting the same amount of nitrogen on there? Because we are not taking advantage of what we have been. Yeah. And so if we could put that piece in there, we could further, we could do a better job even adding that part to it.
And meeting optimum even better on your fields. One thing that I had a question for Missouri Fertilizer Control Board or Newell, for the grid soil sampling or even the composite one, let's say someone doesn't have soil sampling just yet. Can they still apply for this grant? And if they can, when do they have to have that grid sample or composite soil sample done?
Well, I've been saying, yes, you still can apply, but you need to have the soil sample done before any fertilizer goes on. before the growing season.
They could, so I guess maybe she was asking this in a different way, but they can actually get accepted into the grant without having having the soil sample in hand, and then so they could get accepted and then get the samples taken, so then they could do that part, I guess.
Yeah, so the window is 4 years. So if there's not been a soil sample on a particular field that they want to enroll within the last 4 years, they would need to get a soil sampling done on that field to inform the other fertility decisions for that field going into the corn year. Okay, so this fall, early next spring, guiding them in terms of the P and K input. They certainly can enroll ahead of that.
Okay.
But they would have to give, some kind of verification that they did do that, and the process allows them to do that.
So for a producer that maybe did, some composite samples, let's say it's the family farm, in the 90s, and, now that technology has changed and developed, they've been wanting to try it, but maybe feels a little risky as far as financially. This is a great opportunity for them to go apply for this grant. And if they are accepted, go ahead and work with their retailer, with MFA, and get those samples pulled and a nutrient recommendation written and tweaked, and give great low risk opportunity for them to try these things. And then hopefully they see that it's not only good for them as far as stewardship, but also good for them as far as nitrogen use efficiency and just for their economics as well.
So if they have a sample that was taken for the 2022 crop year, so that could have been taken fall of 2021, that's acceptable because that's 2020, 22, 23, 24, 25, and that's acceptable for that.
Exactly, as long as it's within the 4 growing season.
And that's not uncommon what producers are going to do anyway. You're not necessarily do soil sampling every year.
No, you do
on a cycle of 2 or 4 years. Again, it's to reinforce the principle that soil sampling is a wonderful diagnostic tool for nutrient management decisions, primarily P and K and lime, and some micronutrients and things like that too. But again, not so much for nitrogen, but it still needs to be in place to help us with doing a good job with the nitrogen.
Yeah, for sure.
It enhances your nitrogen if you have it.
Oh, yeah. I just know that would be one question that, producers, they might be a little concerned about applying if they don't have that soil sample just yet.
We welcome everyone to apply. Glide, and long you have that down before you put fertilizer on and you go within your recs, we're happy to have it.
Within NutriTrack, we're on a 4-year resample, so I was just curious how that looked.
Yeah.
How you all wanted that handled.
Oh, yeah. I would definitely recommend the grid soil sampling, not just because we do grid soil sampling, but it's just also we found that is better for your guys' fields, that you get more of a prescription for your field as an overall blanket applying fertilizer. But we are talking quite a bit on nitrogen. So I hope that folks listening are realizing that this application, this incentive program, is for corn acres. And so what it actually is going to be $20 an acre for corn producers to follow the principles and practices of the 4R nutrient stewardship program. It's going to be $20 an acre. Like I said, wanted to reiterate it, a lot of money. And it's going to be up to a maximum of 5 acres. 500, not just 5 acres. That would be a front yard, but 500 acres, or $10,000, to implement one of the 2 specific practices. And so I know that on the website, there are 2 of them. The first one is the one that we've been talking very heavily about, is the 2-pass nitrogen fertilizer application system, to meet the corn crop nitrogen needs. And so that one, we are wanting at least 25% of the total nitrogen fertilizer to be used on the crop or in season. And so can you guys just go a little bit in detail on that? Because there may be some producers that are kind of wondering, okay, do I have to apply it all in the springtime? Can I apply a little bit in the fall? And then, of course, in that in season, the 25%, can you just go a little bit more in detail on it?
Sure. We've been talking about this because there's been lots of questions from year one to help us to refine that statement of what that means. Mm-hmm. So, first off, what is in season? And some have said, well, if I do it when I'm planting, isn't that in season? And typically, we wouldn't think of it that way. That's a really loose way of interpreting that. So, it really the crop has to be out of the ground. It has to be emerged to really count as in season. It's 25% of the total synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. Some of them have said, well, I wanted to include, a biological that I was applying to come up with my calculation. And we've had to narrow that contract language to help them to realize this is just, we can't lean on that or manures or what you might get from a legume cover crop prior in terms of nitrogen, because those things are much more difficult to quantify to begin with. And there's not necessarily a good track record on some of those things. Maybe you get some benefit, but I don't think that we should be using that as a part of this. Or what we don't think. We just have made the decision that we have to make this we're talking about UAN, urea, anhydrous. Those are the three big ones here in the state, I think. What's that? No. And so that's what we're talking about is those three. And so it's 25% within season. So if you put on 160 pounds of anhydrous and you want to come back out with, say, 50 pounds of top dress, you're not quite there. Okay. Almost, there's like 23.8% or something really close. So what we need is to make sure people think about that. Say, well, I'm going to hold back, or I'm going to go 60 top dress to make sure I get there. If I'm going to put 160 out, and 160 plus the 60 is 220. And if you take the 60 and divide it by the 220, you're above the 25%. Okay, so it's really important to kind of have them think through this in the fall to be able to stay eligible for this program. And it may not be the way they've been doing it in the past is going to work. Okay.
Do you use machine application data to treat that, or is it kind of on your honor, or
combination of both? So we asked, after the practice has been done at verification documents, the best verification document is an as-applied map. Okay, because you're going to get, you see the field, you see the acres as it was applied. It may not exactly match up with FSA acres, but it's going to be close enough and doesn't need to. We just need to know that it's right in there. It's going to show the date that it was applied, and you'll know it's within season. And so that, along with maybe an invoice showing the anhydrous application rate, and then they're going to be able to do that. And if that documentation as applied map or other invoices that a producer has doesn't kind of get all the way to showing all of those pieces, we just have them handwrite it on there and sign the document. So that's where the honor comes in, because there's some of this that just doesn't automatically get spit out on an invoice or on a as applied map. But so we're trying to be reasonable about that verification information. So
Okay.
and
I mean, that definitely covers a lot of different possibilities for them.
And I'm going to add one thing. If you do fall anhydrous in front of that, we need an inhibitor included on that.
are there certain inhibitors that are allowed and certain ones that are not?
At this time, we just say inhibitor. There is different qualities inhibitors, and
We have not targeted specific brands, so
But an inhibitor. Okay.
yes.
Okay. We'll be a cheerleader for that. I'm game.
Yeah, we highly recommend protecting your nitrogen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like we said, it's not cheap.
it's not cheap.
And with warm winters coming up, and oh, yeah.
In wet springs, it's a great time to spread that nitrogen application.
Yeah.
It's a fan of an inhibitor at any fall, spring.
I'm
Most,
big fan of inhibitors that work. I'm not a fan of inhibitors that don't work.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And I think the Gulf of Mexico would also agree. My daughter's up too. But yeah, so just for a producer. Okay. So they were going to go to the Circle Grant website, which is the Climate Smart Resilient Crop and Livestock Project website. We had mentioned that in a past podcast, like I had discussed earlier with Kelly and Bethany. So they go on there, and the deadline for this is August 1st to September 30th of this year to go ahead and sign up. They had already mentioned that there's some geographical areas that are going to be priority 1. This year is going to be the west side. And then last year was that northeast and central, but you can still sign up. It does not mean that you won't get in, but we just have different priorities. And so then once they have submitted the application, we've discussed that it's a very simple application, very quick. I know that Mitchell has talked that even his father, it took 7 minutes, and he doesn't know quite well how to operate computers or
very Facebook savvy, white
Technology savvy. Yeah.
so can buy something off a marketplace, but that's about it. Okay. So that's good. And so then after that application has been submitted, then what occurs? Because I know that we were discussing that this ends in September, and if folks are wanting to do fall applied anhydrous, they're wanting to kind of get those recommendations set up with their ag retailer. What's the next steps? How will they be notified? Is the ag retailer going to let them, or you guys?
Can I add one thing to
Yes.
that application process? Be sure to keep your maps from turning in your previous year crop from FSA, because you will need your farm, track, and field numbers. If you didn't keep them when you turn those into your insurance, run by your FSA office. They'll be happy to print them out for you, but you definitely need those 3 numbers, or there should be several field numbers, but you definitely need the farm and track numbers.
Okay, that's really good to know as well. And so then we've entered in that information. We have your farm, your track, and then your field numbers. And so is MU going to be the one reaching out to the producer, or is the ag retailer? Because that's one question that I've had from our side, but also producers.
Yeah, that's one of my roles, one of my jobs.
Okay.
So the program that the center is using to receive and process and manage the information for this project, for these different programs within the project, is a program that's called Farm Raise. So when an individual goes in to enroll, they will, at first, if they don't have, they will need to get a Farm Raise account. Okay, there's no charge associated with that. Once they've got that, then they can enroll in the practice that they're looking at. Okay, and that's the part that takes about 7 minutes, not very long. Okay, and then once we close, we will be looking at the total number of applicants. And it kind of just depends on how many applications we have, how many acres are represented by those different applications. We have a set budget for this, as everybody has to work off of. And if application acres is a lot greater than the budget, then we have to go through a process of scoring. And so there will be some ranking of those applications. So certainly as mentioned, the geographic west part of the state is going to have a focus. So that's part of the ranking. Another part of the ranking is going to be if a producer hasn't done this practice before, if they've never done a lot of in season, that's going to be a part of the scoring. So we'll go through that. We'd like to be able to get as many acres in the program as possible, but we do have budget restrictions there, so we're just going to do the best we can. And then after that, we'll be notifying everybody in terms of what they would need to do next. And there's some steps that happen through the winter and spring. So
would that be an email? Would it be snail mail, or would it be a call?
No, it's usually email from myself.
Okay.
So I still have an adjunct, even though I'm kind of independent now, I've got an adjunct position with the University of Missouri, because I was over there for about a years and on a lot of graduate student committees, and I still on some committees and so forth. And so I still have it. And so through my University of Missouri affiliation and as a working directly with the Center for Regenerative Ag, we kick that out in individualized emails so they know exactly what to do next. And this is the next step. Need to do this by this time. And we try to keep the communication flowing.
Okay, perfect.
Well, and one thing we learned last year, granted, we were kind of building the plane while we flew it last year, really. in getting the turnaround time and everything. We did the signups in the fall, which was really kind of challenging for the producers and their retailer to get those plans written if they weren't in the middle of a 4-year cycle. So this year with the sign-up period, August and September, that should give some more time for those decisions and conversations to take place.
Yeah, that would be really nice. And then MFA part in this. So ag retailers. So whenever they're signing up, I'm assuming then they'll get the email from you, Newell, and then they will be able to pick from an ag retailer to then help with their fertilizer recommendation, correct?
Right. So the through the enrollment process, they will see that it's linked to the Missouri Fertilizer Control Board, and they're the ones that are going through this process of certifying ag retailers and the CCAs. And so the list you just told me a little while ago is up to 100 and something.
It's up to 102 retailers and free.
So about 105 total that have gone through the certification, which is pretty amazing. You think about it, because where were we a year and a half ago?
4.
Okay, so that means 18 months ago, as a state, we really hadn't implemented the 4R nutrient certification within the state. It is voluntary. Some states it's being regulated. Okay, this is a voluntary approach to, which sounds like Missouri, right? Even so, but at least we're getting things started in a way to kind of weave it into the fiber or the fabric of how we do things here in the state.
Yep.
For our nutrient management stewardship principles is what we want. Okay, so we're a long ways down the road from where we were. And so they'll be picking, they'll say, well, I'm working with this store. So they'll actually identify that in the enrollment process. Okay. And then, anyway, I think it's
directly linked to the Missouri Fertilizer Control Board website, and you just scroll down and you just literally click on your store, like, my particular location at BMFA, Salisbury and Sheridan County, you'd click on. So.
Yeah, I do know that I think 90% of the ag retailers on there are MFA locations. So we definitely have been doing a lot. Yes, we've definitely been pushing strong with the 4Rs through the NutriTrack system that we have. And so that is something that MFA, we preach a lot, especially with our grid soil sampling. I know I've mentioned that already in this podcast, but it is very important. If you're not getting it from us, then definitely just grid soil sampling for sure.
Well, and with that, part of the certification program itself, it's a program that the Nature Conservancy has kind of endorsed. It is a trademarked program of the Fertilizer Institute. So it's not something that we invented. We have a partnership with them to use that program. But when Mitchell's going out and doing these 4 certification meetings with retailers, in this case specifically with MFA and NutriTrack, we're making sure that when someone clicks on that specific retailer as a 4R certified retailer, that those nutrient recommendations are science-based, that they are reasonable, that they are based on achievable goals, and also that those retailers, this is where MFA really shines, is providing education opportunities for their customers and for their application staff. So everybody understands that we're kind of all on one team. We're able to do this proactively, voluntarily, and it helps us with the Missouri Fertilizer Control Board tell the story of what Missouri's farmers and retailers are doing and how we're doing that proactively to be good stewards.
And to tell the story of these retailers, they're doing things right already. Because, going in and auditing, and MFA was the top of the list, we're providing the educational tools. They're meeting the other points on their own and need to be commended on having good staff, a good program. And like I say, the only thing we really had to add to the audit process is the education materials. And, and MFA's been right there helping and wanting to help provide that additional education materials besides what the Fertilizer Control Board is doing.
And that is one of the things that I also wanted to touch on, is that the producer, when they are signing up, there are just a handful of videos that will need to be watched. I think there's a grand total of like 15, 20 minutes worth of videos to watch. 18 minutes. I apologize. And so that is just another piece of that, but it's very quick and beneficial.
The ones, Missouri Fertilizer Control Board, they're nice quality videos. And some of the ones from the nitrogen videos, and we're actually working together with the university and some of the ones to update it to more Missouri-based material. And there'll probably be an addendum, I can't talk to that, to this. We'll have them watch these 4 videos, and we'll probably provide 2 more videos updated once we have those that we're working on them now. And once they're through the production stage, we'll email those out to this year's participants.
Okay, perfect. And then we've covered a lot on everything that I think a producer would need to know. The other thing that I was wanting to touch on is the crediting for manure nutrients. And I didn't know if that was something that was going to be active for sure in the 2025 growing season. I know it had lightly...
Yeah, good question. So that's been out there on the website, so people have seen that, and we've had a few people asking questions, and we're still actually trying to work out exactly how we're going to do that one. And it may be that the enrollment for it, since it's going to be many fewer acres by virtue of just the nature of it, it may be that it's even outside of the formal enrollment process that we have to farm raise. Okay. So there probably will be an edit to that to where explains that particular program and how it'll be handled. So, okay. I'm not sure that it will be this year. Again, and part of it is just the ramp up on the other one. I mean, we're a chunk of the state that this new year, the 2025 growing season is at least twice the area of the first year, and so there's just a lot of logistics to kind of keep the communication flowing and then not letting that bog down. So we feel like we could put a lot more emphasis on the one practice that we have, this in-season nitrogen practice. And so the others, we'll give some attention to it, but it's probably going to be a minor.
Okay, so more to come for the crediting for manure nutrients. Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to kind of ask the Missouri Fertilizer Control Board is that, this is just for corn, but there are some things in the works through the soil and water conservation districts where you can kind of broaden that a little bit more. And I didn't know if you guys wanted to talk about that or if we want to keep that under wraps.
Yeah, well, no, we're great talking about it because we actually need the producers' help. We need to show a demand for it. We need the producers to go to their local soil and water offices and say, hey, I want nutrient management. Because we have to go to each and every board throughout the state. And the board members need to know there's a demand for it. So if producers show the demand, they'll call us, we'll come down, we'll present, and get it, part of each county, because it's county by county. And it's $15 an acre.
And it's not just corn.
It's not just corn, up to the $10,000. So you have a few more acres. It's a great way to follow up your corn. You can hit your soybeans. You can hit your wheat. You can hit your grasses. It could be on pasture. It's the multifaceted for this program. That way it includes, pasture, cattlemen. It includes row croppers. And it ties hand in hand with this program, but it's more on the water quality side. We're looking at water quality there. So we have to be pretty persnickety with our P and K on that. We need to keep that in that 90% range on the recommended rates.
Yeah. So with that, we've been working on this. We had a 3-year pilot program that the Soil and Water Conservation Commission approved. There was a bit of a challenge with COVID in the middle of that time period. So it moved at the speed of government times COVID. But
and employee retention.
And yes, a huge exodus of soil and water employees to NRCS. So there were several challenges there. So they gave us another 2-year extension. We are working in that same, like Mitchell said, it is a pilot. So we are going county by county. Our hope is not only through demand at those county offices, but also showing demand and how this has worked through the Circle program, that we can go back and have it, even if it's opened regionally, similar to how we did Circle Grant for the Soil and Water Conservation Program. We would love to do that. We really do feel like this is a common sense approach to nutrient management. There are other programs out there, but to be honest, as producers ourselves, it's kind of scary to jump into an N590 or an NRCS 590 program when you can work with your trusted retailer and use that NutriTrack program instead and still be able to show nutrient management and take advantage of some of these cost share programs.
Mm-hmm. And as someone that has written some 590s, nutrient management plans, those are, they take a long time. They definitely do. They are lengthy.
I will tell you, we're working with a gal with MS, what is that?
Missouri Association of Soil and Water
Yes.
Conservation.
Who has, yes, it's a mountain. And for you those that don't know, I call her honey. We are a husband and wife team.
Yes.
So she has come up with a program. It is straightforward. It is an easy application. You go into the office, you fill it out. They send it to one of us for with the recommendations. And then once you have your fertilizer on, you send all that in. It is straightforward. It's about as easy as the farm raise, other than it is through the office, not through the internet. But Anna has done an awesome job putting that together.
Okay, that's a really good note too. Yeah. And then I guess lastly with this, we have two other things. So payment. I'm assuming that, the producers are going to do everything. When will they get paid? And I guess how will they get paid? I know we've already discussed what the ag retailer is supposed to kind of offer that producer in the form of verification documents. But how is the payment?
So I'll quickly go through the major steps. Okay. Enrollment for the next growing season opens August 1, closes into September. Mm-hmm. We process all those applications. We make some decisions of how far we can extend that. Notification, explanation of that their application has been received and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then some point after that, it should be, sometime in the wintertime, they will be given opportunity to kind of then do the next step, which is establishing a contract. And the contract, again, is through farm raise, but it's with where the funds reside is with the University of Missouri, because that's where the grant went. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the funds are there in an account with the university, and the contract is put in place. Okay, they do the practice. They have to have documentation of some type to verify that they did the practice, and then they go into a module where they are actually on farm raise. They downloads, they drop some files in there to say this is my documentation, and we have to review that to make sure that it looks like it's a fairly complete set of documentation for that practice. And then after that, once it gets checked off, so there's one other module they have to do. It's a module that's other farm information. It's some additional information that the USDA requires us to get with regards to these public funds. Okay. And we've been trying to negotiate what exactly is needed and how granular that needs to be, and trying to get that improved. And so there's probably some changes to the first year to the second year on that. But so anyway, so the other farm information that's gathered, and it takes a little bit of time to go through that, but it's not a lot. And it's pretty, within farm raise, you just go into a bunch of questions, you put this in and answer these questions the best you can, and move on. So once that module is done and they've got the verification document in, then we review it. And I've been doing this. So this year's, top dress or side dress kind of applications would have been mid-May to mid-June-ish, kind of something like that. And so I started seeing documentation showing up in the latter part of June, and the first ones have already been reviewed, been accepted, verified that they've done all the other modules. Box gets checked. Paperwork gets initiated to get a payment. And if they've set up that payment to come into their bank account as a direct electronic transfer, it should happen within a week. Some said they don't want it that way. They want it by check. And so it gets mailed. And so maybe a week and a half, so it happens fairly quickly at that point.
Okay.
So they're kind of in control of how quickly it happens based upon getting the other farm information completed, that module, as well as the verification documentation. Once they can document that and verify that, then as quickly as we can go and get in there and look at each of those and make sure it's done, it gets initiated.
Okay, so don't drag your feet on it. Make sure you're submitting all of your documents when needed to get your payment.
And you think about that's not too unreasonable, because if they were doing that in, say, early June, and they've got it in there now, and they're getting payment, they say this week, so that's 5-6 weeks after, and that's not too bad.
Oh yeah,
So
especially for $10,000. I mean, I would
That's
definitely, yeah. I know that you guys had also mentioned the webinar. So there's a webinar that you guys are going to be collaborating again. This trilogy, this trifecta. Ah, yes. This glowing triangle. So do you guys want to talk about it a little bit more? I know you said it was next week on the 25th. It's a Thursday at 9 a.m. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Is it going to be similar or different setup for this webinar?
different for what? Excuse me.
So is it going to be a little bit more tables and things that you can actually see? Because this, of course, going through your airwaves.
This is okay. Yeah, this is very conversational. We'll have some PowerPoint slides to kind of illustrate the process, kind of steps that will happen, and so it's perhaps more structured than our conversation. Yes. But do you need to watch that seminar? Not necessarily, but if you want to be kind of cued into that and kind of the details, I will say we anticipate the response to be pretty good this coming year. And so, I would think it would, if I were in the position of wanting to get enrolled, I would not be waiting till the end of September.
Yeah,
because date of enrollment is actually something we have to honor too. I mean, if there's 5x response to this, it's first in terms of applications also. So that's kind of an important element. I hope I'm not disclosing secrets here, but that's one of the things we'll be looking at.
And then where do you go to actually get signed up?
So on the Center for Regenerative Ag, you get to the project and you'll see nutrient management. And on August 1, when you hit that, it'll basically say, are you wanting to enroll for the 2025 growing season? And then it'll take you into going and getting that account with FarmRaise. And then once you log into FarmRaise, it'll trickle into those questions you need to ask.
But the webinar.
Oh, sorry, the webinar. You don't have to register for the webinar. We have a flyer. We'll get it to you, and you can distribute it out to everybody. You will be able to access it if you just go to the center this webpage. There'll be a link there. You can go to it there also. And we'll just take an hour and talk about the program for nutrient management.
Will there be a question and answering section for that?
Yeah, there will be.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
On that too, and hopefully we won't have to go through too many more dress rehearsals on this.
And we will also share that link on the Fertilizer Control Board and MOAG, a lot of social media sites. as well.
Yeah, that's good. In fact, we'll record it and we'll have that webinar link recorded so people can go back if they're not able to catch it.
Okay. Yep. And I know that MFA will also have it on their social media for you guys to sign up for, whoever's listening, or then to look at it later on. But I think that is everything that I had to cover. Center for Regenerative Ag has a lot of great incentive programs coming out, and they're partnered with a wonderful team with the Missouri Fertilizer Control Board, and they have a great consultant in the form of Newell. And so I really do appreciate you guys coming and talking. And I appreciate Davin being here on the MFA side to really drive home our NutriTrack, but also what MFA is doing for our producers and our employees. But thank you all, and we will talk to you later. Thank you all again for listening to the Made for Agriculture podcast, but also listening to my voice, your host, Emily Beck. We had a great podcast today talking about the Missouri Fertilizer Control Board and what they're doing with the Center for Regenerative Ag, but also for producers in the form of nutrient management and 4Rs, and just highlighting MFA and how we've been driving home the 4Rs through soil sampling and through our variable rate fertilizer recommendations. And so if you haven't, definitely go into an MFA location near you, talk to that ag retailer that we have, MFA, and get access to these great resources. And also, if you're wanting to listen to even more podcasts, if you just didn't get enough